Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast at Genesis Communications Network in Minnesota. I'm Vincent Finelli. And today, hour number one, Cathy in Ohio, domestic engineering. She's our domestic engineer. And she's going to save us some money and share her thoughts on going forward as we prepare to survive going down the drain. Hour number two, me in the book. Welcome, Cathy.
Good morning, Vince. How are you?
I'm really excited. I wanted to let you know that the water filtration system is opening up, and they're going to be shipping, and all kinds of good news in the area of water filtration. So I wanted to tell you that. So, Cathy, what do you have on the blackboard for us today?
I know I won't get to the majority of it, but a few things I would like to talk about. Some of the shortages that I'm seeing, where I found them, how I found them, and the price increases. And I would like to talk a little bit about trying to get things ready if you have any transplanting to do with your garden, or trying to get your gardens ready for the fall and the winter. And I also have a couple things on seeds and some of the demand on that industry. I talked to Mr. White yesterday, and we talked a little bit about that. So, like I said, I know I won't get to the majority of it, but I'm going to try to get to what I feel is like most important right now before we get into the winter season.
Okay. Are you going to talk about shortages first and what you found?
Sure. Vince, you've been talking about parts, and we had a few instances around here. And these are just some examples that we ran into. We needed a cartridge for the shower head, and it was just over a year old. So my husband was looking to replace it, and what cost $34 last year is now $79 for the same thing. And then he went to order the seats and springs for it, thinking that, well, he would try that first. And those have quadrupled just for those. So that is just one example of how, when you go to get it, if you can get it, the prices are anywhere from double to 4 times what they were even a year ago, 6 months ago.
Cathy, we when there was an announcement by the White House that they were going to send money to everybody gets some relief, they might have called it. We said here on USA Prepares, get ready. This will be a massive inflationary event. And here it is. I've tried to buy some tools, and I've bid on them on the internet to what I think is a more than fair price. And I'm blown away by other bidders who just come in at the last minute, and they will bid 2 and 3 and 4 times what I would have bid. I can't believe it. I wanted to buy another battery charger on eBay, and this thing was at $53. And I thought, you know what? $53 plus, let's go to 70 or so, and the shipping is going to be 20, so that's going to bring it to 90. And this is a 40-year-old battery charger, and it went for well over $100 plus shipping. I couldn't believe it. And that's like 4 times what it cost when it was new, 40 years ago. And I had the discussion with the family about the replacement shower controls. I've talked about this on the air. And get them while you can, because if you have a tiled shower or tiled bathtub enclosure and you can't get that shower control and it's leaking, and you want to stop it from leaking. By the way, when it starts leaking, it doesn't get better. It gets worse. So if it's one drip, every couple of seconds, you wait about a week and it's a drip, or 50 drips a second. So it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And there's no fixing it by just waiting. You actually have to replace parts. And so what I've recommended that our class consider, like right now, is get the replacement shower control parts so that you can just take off that one little screw on the escutcheon, replace, shut the water off, replace that shower control, and not have to, cut out the tile and have a tile guy come in and a wallboard guy come in and replace the wall after the plumber's done hacking the wall apart. So it's real simple to fix if you have the parts. It's real simple if there's forethought. And if you can't get the parts, it's a big problem, because then you have to replace the shower unit, the shower control unit, which means it's not the same size, same shape, same depth. It's different. And it's a mess to retrofit that in. So, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And what we do here at our farmhouse is when we bought, faucets for the bathrooms, they're all the same. They're all the same. 2-lever, hot and cold, simple. They are bar faucets, which means they have a high neck, and it's not like a standard bathroom faucet. It has a high neck, like 8 inches tall. And because I like that better than just a standard bathroom center set. That's what they call them, center set. Well, they're all the same. And so I have one spare for all of the bathrooms. Then for the kitchen, we have an extra whole complete set for the kitchen, because we have 3 faucets that are the same. 2 of them are in use. So the plan is that if something goes wrong, at least we have one full set, a spare complete faucet for the bathrooms and the kitchen. So that's our plan. And then the plan is to get more replacements for them so that we don't have to change out the faucets, because it used to be that a kitchen faucet with a high rise neck would be $40, $39.99. Now, $300. So here you have it, and you're absolutely right. Get it now while you can, because I think it's going to get way worse than it is right now. And right now you're saying it's 3 to 4x or 2 to 4x, right, in price?
Yeah. Well, and I'm trying to do the same thing, Vince. Every time I see something that I'm like, I should get a replacement for that. I'd make my own rye bread. And I used to be able to buy a 5-pound bag of flour, and I'm going to say it was probably $4, $4.50. I can't get a 5-pound bag of flour. I've looked everywhere in this area. Every time I've gone out, I'll look. I found for 22 ounces, I found it was $3.19 at one of the stores. So I bought 3 of them. That's all they had. And since then, they have not restocked them. But I got online, and for a 5-pound bag of flour, I think it was on Amazon, $23. And that, if I go over 25, obviously, then there's not shipping. But the cost is right there. That's almost 5 times as much. And I can't get it unless I want to pay that kind of money. So I can't imagine that maybe if you have white bread, it will be cheaper. But if you want to go with rye or buckwheat or any of the other flours, the cost is just astronomical. And I freeze my flour when I get it home, and then I try to store it in for a while. If I have the room, I leave it in the freezer. If I don't, then I put it in an airtight container. But the other thing that I am noticing, and I wanted to mention to people, I know I mentioned it on one of the shows, but they make a food saver makes a lid, and it goes over a mason jar, and you can use regular standard canning lids, and they can be used as long as the seals aren't like crimped up on the side, as long as they're still flat. And you can use a food saver or a brake bleeder to vacuum out the air. And if you get online, just type in food saver mason jar lid, and you can see what they look like, and it shows you the hose and all that. Well, back when this whole thing happened, there was one on eBay for $10. And I didn't order it because I thought I had one. I was going to just wait and check in the morning. When I got up in the morning, it was sold. And since that time, they have gone from, on eBay, they are anywhere from $69, $49, $99. And I just checked on Amazon, and they're $99 for two lids. And they're not even showing that they're available right now. So I did a little research, and I'm kind of getting the feeling that either they have stopped making them for a while or they're just not available. But that's something that you can store any kind of dry food in a canning jar, whether it's rice or flours or herbs or anything like that, beans, whatever you want, as long as you have ample used lids, which you can use, and I always double check them. But when I got online and I saw that they were $100, and I think they were $19 when this whole thing started. So the availability isn't there, and the cost is astronomical. But one of the things that you mentioned, Vince, was we have something here, and I'm sure it's probably nationwide, but we live rural, and we have, they're called online auctions. And you can see the picture, and it gives a description. And some of that is going pretty high now, too. But there's times where my husband has gotten Milwaukee tools, and he's gotten whole boxes of, like, nuts and bolts and fuses and things like that for just cents on the dollar. But you can bid online. You can go preview it. Normally they have one day where you can preview it if you want to go see what it looks like to see if it works. But we've gotten all kinds of things. I've gotten sewing things. I've gotten some canning jars and cabinets and tools and books that and you can get like amazing amounts of things. But now I think some of the people have caught on because some of those are really going up when people are bidding, because it must be the same thing. They're starting to not be able to find them.
Cathy, as you described this, I was wondering, are you finding that other people have figured out what you have figured out? Are you finding that other people are discussing, boy, I can't get such and such, and boy, it's getting hard, or are they just not paying attention? What are you finding in your world?
Not paying attention.
Yeah.
People, you and I have talked before. People are just kind of oblivious. They just think, oh, well, it'll get better. It'll just get better. And they just don't understand that the supply is not there. And I'm hearing that the warehouses are empty. And that's why we're at the point now where they just can't get them, so there's no even slot on the store shelf.
I believe I heard you use the word brake bleeder. Is that what you used? Is that the term you used?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'll be right back. Quite fascinating, class. I'd like you to hear this when we come back. Cathy in Ohio is with us, and she just shared some of the depth of her knowledge, and she used the term brake bleeder. And I only know a few people who know what a brake bleeder is. That's impressive, Cathy. You want to tell us what that is?
Yeah, Vincent, I also know what a dielectric tape is, too, because I had to go get it for my husband, and the guy at the hardware store couldn't believe that I knew what it was.
I was using dielectric grease yesterday, repairing an old truck, and I use dielectric grease, class. It looks like Vaseline, okay? It's unscented, but it is a special grease that does not conduct electricity. And what I do is I put it on the sockets and the ends of the light bulbs and the connections of vehicles because it prevents moisture from getting to those contact surfaces. So what happens is it prevents corrosion. So the light bulbs keep working, the sockets don't corrode, the light bulbs don't fail at the connections and so forth. And so yeah, dielectric grease and so forth. But a brake bleeder, Cathy, do you want share with what that is, or do you want me to do it?
This I will try, but I'm sure with your knowledge you can explain it better. But what I use it for, if you can visualize, to me it looks like a hand pump, and it's got a gauge on it, and it has a tube that comes out of the pump. My husband calls it like a vacuum pump, but I've heard it called a brake bleeder too. So just in case somebody's looking for it, I've seen it under both names. And it's got a little tip on the end that goes down narrow. And if you can visualize a canning jar with, let's say you want to put in dried basil, and you put a lid on there, and then you put this cap. It's a white cap from Food Saver, and it's got a little hole in it. So you put the lid on the jar, you put the cap on the jar, and then you put the tip that comes from the brake bleeder right in the hole, and then you pump it up. And you pump it up on your gauge until it gets to, I go between 15 and 20. But sometimes you can even hear it seal when you're doing it. But once you get done pumping it up with your hand, and what's nice about that is if you would lose electricity, you could still seal those jars if you wanted to preserve something. You can also do it with a Food Saver. Food Saver has a tube, and you put it in there. But I find that the brake bleeder works a little bit better. And then when you're all done, you take the brake bleeder out of the tube, out of the top of the cap, take the cap off, and then you check it with your fingers. If you can push it off with your fingers, the lid, then you have to do it again, or maybe try a different lid. But if you want to explain it better.
What Cathy's saying is, think of it like this. Think of it like you know what a caulking gun is like? You squeeze the handle, okay? You squeeze it and caulk comes out of the end of the caulking gun. Well, a brake bleeder has a handle like that. And it has a plunger, kind of like a large hypodermic needle. So if you had a hypodermic needle that had, let's say, a 1.5-inch diameter barrel or cylinder, and you squeeze the handle and pull the plunger backward, it would create a vacuum. And what Cathy's doing is applying, squeezing the handle to create a vacuum to withdraw the air out of these jars. And there is a gauge that is measured in pounds of pressure per square inch, and she takes it to around 15. So 15 pounds per square inch of vacuum, not pressure, but vacuum. And the reason it's called a brake bleeder is because we use it in the automotive shop, and when we want to flush out the lines, brake lines, or replace a caliper or wheel cylinders or a master cylinder in the braking system of a vehicle, we need to get the air out of the line, because air gets in the line and you will not be able to stop the vehicle. So you apply vacuum at the wheel location, at the wheel cylinder, and you apply pressure by stepping on the brake pedal. So it takes two people the way we do it. And it works great. So I was quite impressed that Cathy knows what it is and uses a brake bleeder. And you can do what she talked about, and you can find them on the internet. The one that we have is called Mightyvac, Mityvac. I have a feeling Cathy has the same one, and they're about $30, and you can buy them at AutoZone if you want. Take a look at some YouTube videos on how to use it for bleeding brakes as well as for food storage. We'll be right back with Cathy in Ohio. During the break, I just went to samsclub.com, and I thought, let's go check and see if you can buy canned corn. Well, you can, in the number 10 cans, if you go there. But can you get it online? No. Can you get the small cans, the kind that you typically buy? Those 15-ounces? No, they're out of stock. And what I'm finding is exactly what Cathy's saying. You go to check to buy something, and it's out of stock. And now what's happening, what they used to do, a lot of these websites, is that you could find the item that you're looking for, and it would say it's out of stock. Now they delete the item so you can't even find it. So unless you have a previous search and you know exactly what it's called and the model number, etc., then you can find that it's out of stock. But if you don't have it, you do a search and you try to find that item, you can't find it in many cases. So, Cathy, what else have you found? This should be pretty of great concern to our entire class.
Vince, I want to say that a couple things that I have found, and I wanted to mention that might help some people. Big Lots has vinegar in gallons. It's $2.25 a gallon. And I did go shopping about a week and a half ago, and I had read about it, so I thought, okay, I'm right here. I'm going to check and see what their supply is. And they had a decent supply of, I would say, like standard items in the grocery store. They had canned goods, they had seasonings, and things like your rice and flour, but the vinegar was cheaper. And I want to say that, like, a couple places that I did find, I was looking for masking tape, and masking tape for one roll was like $3.79. And someone told me they were at the dollar store, and dollar store had it $40, and it was made in the USA. So that maybe, I don't know if it's nationwide or if it's just in my area, but that's something if somebody does go there. And the one that I looked at the store a couple months ago, that was $3.49 or $3.79. That was made in a different country. It wasn't even, it was like the brand, I can't think of the brand name masking tape now, but that it wasn't even made in the U.S. So when I went to the dollar store, I did pick up like 4 or 5 rolls just to have it because it was so much cheaper, but it was made in the United States. The other thing I wanted to mention was washcloths and towels. I thought about it, and I think you and one of the other instructors might have mentioned that there was a shortage. So about a week and a half ago when I went shopping, I went to Sam's, and they were out. They had a few towels left, maybe 4 towels, no hand towels, no washcloths, and I asked the lady, are you getting any more in? She goes, we haven't gotten any in for months. She goes, I don't know what's going on. She said sheets are now becoming in short supply. So the one thing I want to talk to people with washcloths is when I did look at them, I looked at a couple stores. They are made, some of them are made so cheap, but they still want a lot of money for them. If you look at the loop on the washcloth, it was already all snagged up. So if you bought those will not last that long because it's going to get caught on everything. So I always look for like a shorter loop. If you can like turn it over and pull it and it pulls out, that washcloth is going to look all snagged up in a matter of a couple months. So I did find a pack that the loop was real tight on it, and I couldn't pull the threads through to make it look like there's a snag in there. So I would say if you need washcloths or towels or hand towels, look for that when you go to buy it. Look for a good quality, a thicker washcloth. Doesn't necessarily have to be those super soft ones, but make sure that the weave, I guess, is what I'm trying to explain, is a little bit tighter. But those were short supply everywhere I went. There was only, I bought 2 packs of 8, and there was only maybe 4 more packs left, and that was all they had in the store.
How about socks? Have you found socks difficult to find? For example, men's socks that women can wear as well. I'm not talking about these sneaker socks where your ankles show. I'm talking about the traditional, not up to your knee, but mid-calf kind of socks, that you'd wear around the farm.
Vince, I hadn't looked for those. Those have been in short supply when we first had this. Even before we had the shutdown, socks were in short supply. I can remember going to one of the stores, I think it was TJ Maxx or something. I used to get a certain brand that my husband liked, and it was there. It was just there was maybe a couple random pairs of dress socks, but all the socks that you're talking about, that's something you would wear with work boots, they were just gone. So I'm anticipating that it'll probably happen again, especially with winter coming. And now if there's any kind of uprising or any kind of shutdown again, I would imagine that's the same. I do want to make another comment that I did look up ball canning supplies, and there is a letter that was sent out to people that they are not going to make any more supplies available to the stores for the rest of the year. They might not even be ready till March or April of next year. And if you do have an order, they're canceling your order because they're just not keeping up with the supplies that they need to send out. So just if somebody was waiting for something, that would be something that you might as well just know you're probably not going to get them.
So the price of 3 pairs of gold toe socks, men's, socks, about $8 a pair. $8 a pair.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I remember, Christmas time at Sam's Club, you could get, I think probably 4 pairs for, $10. Yeah. And good quality sneakers.
Find them. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Good quality sneakers are going to, I'm talking about leather sneakers, ones that, not just for, walking down the sidewalk. I'm talking about durable sneakers. The best brand I found is Brooks. And I think they're absolutely fabulous, but they're really hard to find. Really hard to find. And they're really expensive. I'm talking close to a couple $100 for a pair of sneakers, which is crazy to me. So what I'm finding exactly what you're finding, Cathy. There's all kinds of shortages. And who would have thought? Who would have thought that you wouldn't be able to buy paper towels? Who would have thought that? You can buy the junky ones, but it's hard to find, the good quality ones, the kinds that we use in the shop. And it's hard to find the gloves, those latex gloves that we wear in the shop, the blue ones when we, want to keep our hands from getting all filthy with oil and grease. We're running on, the ones that we bought before the Corona panic. What else are you seeing, Cathy?
Vince, Menards has a good price on borax, washing soda, felt naphtha. I had to go in a couple weeks ago, and I happened to walk by, and I'm going to look at see what the price is. And they were cheaper than Walmart. They were cheaper than our other, like we have a Kroger and a couple other grocery stores here. They were like $1 cheaper on some of the brands that I had. So if somebody is in Menards and needs any of that, our store has like a little cleaning section now, and they added that. So, and Menards has a decent price on vinegar too. So if somebody is in Menards and you need it, I would say, stock up, because they didn't have a lot on the shelf. They had a couple boxes each, but I don't know if that's typical. I don't go in there that much, but I will check next time I go. The other thing is some places we're coming into like the holiday season and the Christmas season. They have seasonal foods. And I know that Aldi's has things like molasses. They only have it they'll maybe get it right around now, and they'll have it until Christmas, and then they won't carry it. But they always have a great price on their molasses. So I always buy 4 or 5 jars to get me through till the next year, because it's a lot cheaper than paying probably double the price anywhere else. Now, I don't know what's going to happen this year with the way the food is, but Costco always carries vanilla beans, just the beans. And I make my own vanilla extract. And they did have it in at our Costco, so I bought one. And it's real easy to make your own vanilla extract at a fraction of the cost. You just take 2 or 3 vanilla beans and you scrape out the seeds, and then you put in 1.5 cups of vodka, and you put it in a jar and shake it up and leave it in there. And every couple of weeks, shake it up, and in a few months, you'll have your own vanilla extract. And if it's too You can always add a little more vodka if it's you want it to have more of the stronger flavor and the scent. But if not, that's a real cheap way to do it. There again, some of the stores only carry it right now, so you might be smart to look for those things that maybe can carry you through. Now, maybe they'll have more specialty flowers and things coming in, but I just wanted to mention that to kind of keep your eyes open if you're...
Yeah, since you mentioned vodka, class, you may want to stock up on a couple fifths of vodka. And the reason for that is you can make your own tinctures with vodka. So, for example, you can get fresh hot peppers, like cayenne and other hot peppers. And that's what we do. And we wash them, of course, put them in a blender, puree them, add some vodka, and put it in a jar, fill that jar almost all the way to the top. I mean, very little air. And put that jar in a cabinet, shake it every day, keep it out of the sun, of course, dark. Shake it every day. And within a month or two, you'll have a tincture. You can take a coffee filter, a paper coffee filter, and filter out the sediment, and you will have a tincture of hot peppers, which is kind of like those drops that people sell to help with circulatory issues. So look it up. Don't believe anything I say, but you can make your own tinctures. And vodka is a great alcohol to use because it's safe. That's just a thought. Cathy, have you made tinctures?
I have, Vincent. I'm glad you mentioned it. I totally forgot to mention it. It's a great idea. And you can make your own elderberry syrup, too. Our little health food store has a kit, and it's very reasonable. It's almost better for me just to get that. They make up their own. And when I make up my elderberry syrup for the winter, I get 3, I think they're 20-ounce bottles out of it, and it's like $10, so it's real cheap. Vince, the other thing is the shipping, I think, is what's hurting a lot of people. I mean, when you go to buy something, sometimes the shipping is outrageous.
Absolutely. And that's why you might want to consider a Sam's Club Plus membership and get free shipping. Cathy and I'll be right back. Cathy's with us, and she's our domestic engineer, and she's ringing the alarm. And she is telling us all that supplies are getting harder and harder to find. The supply chain is broken. And you can't just get what you want just because you want it. And the prices are going up. And they're not going to come down. And with the next stimulus package, the next riot-preventing stimulus package, or riot delaying, I should say. I don't think it'll prevent the riots. It will just delay them a little bit more. That is going to be inflationary again. So we are seeing the cost of goods, the price of goods that are of quality going higher and higher and higher. And I've seen 2, 3, 4X, and so has Cathy. So if it cost X in the good old days, like December, it might cost 2 times that, or 3 times that, or 4 times that now. Cathy, what else are you seeing?
Vince, can I mention seeds, garden seeds? I talked to the white seed harvesting company. I talked to Mike yesterday, and I asked him the availability, and he said they have seeds, but he said that they are not as plentiful as normal, and he said that it probably would be a good idea if you wanted them to order them soon, because he has a feeling they'll run out. Some, he said, they have a lot, and some are, not where he would like it to be. So he feels that they'll run out. So I asked him how to store, how he would recommend to store the seeds. And he talked about putting them in a mason jar in the refrigerator, but don't crank it down real tight. A little bit of air has to get in there. And you can put a oxygen absorber in it. And he said there's some you can buy online, and they will change color when they're no longer working. And so that's what he recommended. That way it kind of keeps them fresh. And he said the lifespan of seeds are different, but typically with like things like onion, parsley, lettuce, those will last 1 to 3 years. And tomatoes, cucumbers, and melons will go a little bit longer. They can go maybe 3 to 4 years, but you can do a little test and you can wet the seeds, put them in a baggie, leave it open, and check them in about 10 to 15 days. And if they start to sprout, you know you have a viable seed. So I just wanted to mention that in case people wanted to order seeds. I know that they're heirloom seeds, and so that's important too.
And the gentleman that you were referring to is Mike Knox, Nocks, and he's a USA Prepares instructor, and he's in Missouri. So Mike Knox has been on the air with us for years, and he's been to the expos. And Cathy, so when you talked to him, did you let him know that you were an instructor?
I did, Vince. Yes.
Did he have a reaction to that?
Of you. He spoke very highly of you. He says, "Oh yes, I know Vincent." So.
Well, he's a real gentleman, and so I'm glad you did. So, class, if you happen to call White Harvest Seed Company, whiteharvestseed.com, if you happen to call them and order seeds, make sure you let them know that you heard about Mike Knox and his family, it's a family company, on USA Prepares, because he is an instructor, and I think it would be a nice thing to do to let them know that they are highly thought of here at USA Prepares. Cathy, what else are you finding that you'd like to share with us?
Vince, there's a book called Seed to Seed, SEED, and the lady's name is Suzanne Ashworth, and it's extremely comprehensive. I ordered a paperback book, and it came in, and it tells you everything about the zone and how to plant it, how to save it. I mean, it's very comprehensive. I am learning how to save seeds more than I ever have. And I wanted to mention before we are done, I didn't get into much of the gardening things, but 2 things I think would make a smart thing to do would be to make like a garden calendar. Even if you have to sketch around your garden and hand sketch it, write down what you put in, when you planted it, how it was, did it produce, and write down the mistakes you made and the things that came out well. And that way it gives you a chance to look back and reflect, because you're not going to remember everything that you put in, and the tags are going to come off. And so I didn't do it this year because I was so busy, but I typically write out just a handwritten garden calendar. And the other thing is to learn your frost date. Like I'm in a zone 5, so my frost date's coming up in the next week or 2, so I will probably lose everything I have. But if you learn your frost date, then you know just about when you have to harvest everything. And last but not least, I wanted to mention, when you have to transplant, try to transplant things 6 weeks before you get the ground gets really hard, just so that it has a chance to get in and get situated.
Cathy, thanks so much. We're out of time. Everyone all set? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Just me for this hour. I'll be talking about some events that have happened here. I'll be talking about some suggestions, things you ought to consider, and tips from the unfinished, unpublished, unorganized, not-for-sale book that I've been writing. And it's not a teaser. It's not like I'm trying to get you to say, "Oh, I can't wait till it publishes it, and I'm going to buy it." It's not even. It's just handwritten, so it doesn't look like it's ever going to be available for sale. But I do have a title for it, and the title is "Since You Mentioned Cars," and it has a little bit to do with cars, but that's just kind of an inside joke with Rich Sheehan, and when he comes on the air with us on Tuesdays, I start out with saying, "Since you mentioned cars," and he hasn't said anything about cars. And so that's what that inside joke is about. So since he mentioned cars, I was working on a Chevy Silverado in the last couple of weeks, and it needed a new rear bumper. The average cost to get a bumper replaced on a U.S. vehicle. This is a roughly a 20-year-old pickup truck. And the reason it needed a new bumper was not because it was rusted through, was because the guy who owned the truck previously hooked it up to a trailer that was too heavy, hit a bump, and bent the bumper. Okay? So he needed a new bumper to be replaced. And anyway, so the cost of a bumper in the United States typically is about $881 on average. Now, you can buy a General Motors bumper, and you can spend a lot, or you can buy an aftermarket bumper. So I selected an aftermarket bumper. Now, when you buy one of these things, you do not get to see the specifications about the thickness and the weight and the number of plates and the etc. So before I took off the old bumper, I measured the thickness of the General Motors bumper, 20 years old. And we have a dial caliper, and a dial caliper is a pretty neat instrument. It measures thickness, inside and outside measurements. So you can measure, so if you have like a cylinder and you want to know how big that cylinder is, you can take the measurement of the inside. Or if you have a nut or a bolt and you want to measure the outside of it, it will do that as well. So it has a scale in tenths of an inch, and then it measures, there's a dial that goes with it, and it can measure in hundredths of an inch or thousandths of an inch. So I measured the thickness of this bumper. And by the way, if you want to buy one of these dial calipers, you can get them with a digital display and they're battery powered. That makes no sense to me, because I have the same precision dial caliper that I've had for 40 years. No batteries. But you have to know how to read a ruler, and you have to know how to read a dial. And if you do, it will stay accurate until you destroy it. You know, drop it, bang it, run over it, that kind of thing. So if you're careful with it as an instrument, as a measurement instrument, it'll last lifetimes. Mine's made out of stainless steel. I paid $20 for it 40 years ago. Maybe $18, really. It still works great. Well, I bought it at a flea market. Came in a plastic case and quality. It's a quality precision instrument. So I measured this bumper, the thickness of the steel bumper, the metal part, 80 thousandths of an inch thick. So 80 thousandths is, well, a spark plug gap. If you've ever looked at a spark plug, that's about typically today 60 thousandths of an inch. So a little thicker than that. So if you're thinking that this bumper is really, really substantial, not really. 80 thousandths of an inch thick. So then I measured the new aftermarket replacement made by the communist Chinese. You know, the guys who sent us the virus. Those guys? 55 thousandths of an inch thick. So the communist Chinese have figured out how they can make a bumper look really good out of less material. It's roughly 1/3 thinner than the American one, but they look the same. So the next thing I did was I got out the scale, and I decided to measure the weight of the old bumper, 52 pounds. And the new bumper, 40 pounds. And I looked at the welds. So behind that, shiny chrome exterior, there is an inner bumper. And that's the part that if you put a ball hitch or a trailer hitch ball, you could just bolt it right to the bumper without a trailer hitch. Just put the ball right on the bumper. It's made for that. The original General Motors inner bumper that supports the trailer ball has 15 welds, and each weld is about, an inch to an inch and a quarter long. 15 welds. 1-5. The Chi-Com bumper has 5, and they're about a half an inch long. So the communist Chinese have figured out how they can use less material, less paint, less chrome, thinner bumper, fewer welds, and make it look the same. So I'm just telling you that even though I selected that bumper, the reason I did was because I'm going to put a very heavy-duty, American-made, used from a salvage yard trailer hitch on this particular truck, which will act as the real bumper. And it serves two purposes. One is it's a trailer hitch with a 2-inch box, and it's really substantial and mounts to the frame. Now, how much does a trailer hitch cost? Well, I have no idea. I imagine $400 or $500 or more if you have someone put one on for you and you buy it new. Or you can go to the salvage yard and pick one up for $75, which is better if you get the one that was made by General Motors, if you have a GM car, or the one that's made by Ford, if you have a Ford truck. Or if you have a Dodge, get the one that was manufactured by Dodge, because they actually made it to fit. And they designed it. And they have a team of engineers that most of the time does a really good job. So I think you ought to consider buying some parts for your vehicles from salvage yards. And you ought to establish a relationship with some guy or gal who works at the salvage yard that actually knows what they're doing. And we do. We have those relationships. So we call our guy, and if he's not there, if he's out to lunch, we either leave a message or we call back. But we want to talk to our guy. Why? Because our guy remembers us. And our guy gives us better prices than the other guy who doesn't know us. So I could have bought a used bumper, but typically what happens with trucks is the bumpers get bashed up right away. So it's really hard to find a good used bumper that's been on a vehicle for 20 years. It's really hard to do that. So that's why I bought the new one. And how much did I pay? $126. Now that seems like a pretty low price, doesn't it? Shipping included to Missouri from California. Shipping included. But if you buy one of these aftermarket bumpers, there's no tech support. And don't expect all the holes to be drilled in the right place, because they're not. You're going to have to finagle it, finesse it into shape and get it to fit. But for $126, I was willing to do that versus $881, which would be the typical cost of having a bumper replaced. Okay. So we went out, to the end of our gate, and the post that supports the gate from swinging too far was bent over. One of those green posts. And we had just gotten a delivery from Federal Express. I didn't see it, but I thought, gosh, this guy just backed right over our post. And the post is 3 feet off, in the grass, off the driveway. And we have one of those kind of driveways where you enter it, it's stone. It's nothing fancy. It's just crushed stone. And we designed it so that you could literally pull off this dirt road, stop your truck or your truck and your trailer, walk to the gate, and then open the gate. And that way you wouldn't be tying up traffic if there were traffic. Okay, we wouldn't be blocking the road while we're trying to open the gate to get through the gate, to get into our farm. So that's the kind of entrance we have. Nothing fancy. And it looked to us like the Federal Express driver backed over this post and bent it over. I don't mean bent it a little bit. If he bent it a little bit, I would just straighten it up. But bent it over substantially, like way over, almost on the ground over. So I asked Mrs. Finelli to find the number for me while I did some other things, and I called Federal Express, and I got the gal at the control tower at the local Federal Express hub. And I said, hey, I'm Vince Finelli, and I just want to tell you that we got a delivery today, and your driver left something here. And she said, oh, what'd he leave? And I said, part of his truck. And she said, well, he did? I said, yeah. When he backed over our fence post, he broke the part of the trim on the truck, and it's here. And I'm keeping it for you if you'd like it. And I said, so I'm going to hire somebody to repair this. And I'm going to send you the bill, and I want to make sure that you get this part of your truck. And I said, I'm sure you have a camera on your truck to show that the driver did actually do what I said he did. Went right onto the grass, backed over this post, bent it over, didn't tell us. I said, I'm kind of surprised. I'm kind of surprised he didn't say, oh, Mr. Finelli, I'm so sorry. I damaged your property. Nope. It was a hit and run. It was a hit and run by Federal Express. It really was. So I got a chance to talk to the manager at the warehouse there, the hub in the big city of Springfield. And he couldn't have been more apologetic. And I thought I would probably be able to see the smoke from this guy being chewed out, when he returned back. Because what he didn't do was he didn't tell me, didn't call. I mean, they've got our phone number. Didn't call, so here's what I did. Didn't leave a note. And what he did was he leaned this bumper. Now, this is when we got the bumper delivered. This bumper was in a big box, the width of a pickup truck, because it's the bumper, right? The rear bumper. So let's say a foot by a foot and 6.5, 7 feet long, the box. He just leaned it on the gate. A neighbor happened to see this box, and he called up and he said, hey, Vin, just want to let you know there's a big box leaning against your gate, and it looks really inviting. Somebody might want that before you actually go pick it up from the end of your driveway. Our driveway is about a third of a mile long, so it's not easy to see the end of our driveway from the house. So that's when we found out that the post was bent over. But why would the guy just leave it leaning like that? Why wouldn't he put it on the other side of the gate where no one would steal it? So those were the questions. You know what happened? I'll tell you when we come back. Interesting. A couple days later, I went out to check the mail at the end of the driveway, and that fence post was all fixed, repaired, and no word from Federal Express. They just did it. So what I'm trying to tell you, class, is if you speak up, you just may get results. Now, I told them I was going to bill them for it. I was going to hire somebody. I said, probably going to take about an hour and a fence post. So a fence post is about $5. I'm just going to hire somebody to do that. And I'm going to pay them to do it. Well, they jumped right on it. You know why? Because they didn't want to get the bill. Because if they got the bill, then it would go through accounting and someone would say, what is this bill for 1 hour of labor and a fence post? What's that all about? Well, Jake, he was the guy that backed over and damaged the truck and, yeah. So they didn't want that. So what they did, because that gets reported to headquarters and then people get spanked for not reporting damage and things like that. So they just sent somebody out. I don't know who it was. Maybe it was the manager. Maybe it was, Jake himself. I don't know. But anyway, that's that story. So we had a tractor, a 1991 John Deere tractor, and it has a speedometer. Well, actually a tachometer, and it tells you the engine revolutions per minute. And that's, it has an hour meter, and that would be the equivalent of an odometer on a car. So the odometer or the hour meter on this tractor stopped working. And I thought, I didn't like that. I didn't like that because we determine when we're going to change the oil in these tractors at about 100 hours. So if you think about it, what's 100 hours? Well, typically on an automobile or a light truck, you change the oil based on miles driven. Well, that's not the case with tractors. There is no miles driven meter, but there is an hour meter, how long the engine's been running. And they typically take a mid amount of RPM. So let's say 1800 RPMs, revolutions per minute. And they say how many hours was the engine running at 1800 RPM. So it would be longer if there were fewer revolutions per minute, shorter amount of hours if it were higher revolutions per minute. So it's how many hours at roughly 1800 revolutions per minute of the engine. Well, it stopped working. And I looked at it, took the hood off and looked, and there is a cable. And it's like the old bicycle speedometer cable. If you ever had a bicycle speedometer back in the 1960s, there was a flexible cable that ran in a housing. and it spun. Well, so we disconnected the speedometer cable, and sure enough, the darn thing was broken in the middle. And I looked it up, and John Deere is willing to fleece us for about $40-something, maybe $48, $47. And I just wasn't up for that fleecing. So I decided to repair it myself. So here's what I did. And this is, I'm telling you things that you ought to keep in your mind for, you can do these things. As this gets worse and you have to fix things later on, maybe you'll remember this story. So what I did was I took an electrical crimp ferrule. And what that is those butt connectors or those splice connectors that you put one wire in one end and another wire in the other end after you strip it, and you crimp it with a pair of electrical crimping pliers? Well, a lot of them have these plastic insulative sleeves over the metal insert that you crush onto the wire. Well, we have some of those that don't have the sleeves, the plastic sleeves. We buy lots of them, hundreds at a time, because we use a lot of them here on the farm. And so I found the right size that was just a little bit bigger than the flexible cable. I used carburetor cleaner, cleaned off the end of the cable. I had grease on it, both ends, that I was going to push through this barrel connector. And I had to trim it a little bit with a bench grinder, just a little bit. Just make it a little bit smaller so it fit inside this sleeve, if you will. Now, I didn't crush the sleeve. I made a really tight fit, and I used JB Weld after I cleaned off all the grease with carburetor cleaner. I do that outside because I don't breathe that stuff. And I put the JB Weld on it, put it inside the sleeve, let it set for 24 hours, greased it all up, put the flexible speedometer cable back in its long housing. Works perfectly. So what did it cost? Well, probably if you add up everything, the JB Weld and the sleeve, probably 5 cents total. You can do these things. I'm just telling you a little bit. Interesting statistic. There are only 2% of American new vehicles that were sold last year that were standard transmission. So 98% of the vehicles sold by companies in the United States are automatic transmissions. So that tells me that people either don't know how to drive a standard transmission, don't want to drive a standard transmission, can't drive a standard transmission, or are too lazy to drive a standard transmission. Now, the fact of the matter is that a standard transmission has fewer moving parts, and if you know how to operate one, will give you more miles per gallon. It's as simple as that. And we have vehicles here on the farm that are standard transmission. Everybody here at the farm knows how to drive a standard transmission. Mrs. Finelli, the boys, my mom when she was alive, my dad, of course. We all knew how to drive a standard transmission. And I have to tell you, I have a truck that has a 5-speed stick shift on the floor from the factory. I didn't modify it. It just came that way. And it was used. And to drive a standard transmission, you have to pay attention. You have to be involved in the operation of your vehicle. And when we got away from that, when we got away from the standard transmissions that gave us the ability to talk on the phone, watch movies, read, put on our makeup, do our nails, things, eat while we're driving, right? Operating their vehicle because we don't have to shift all the time. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you have to, you can't use your cell phone and shift. It's like, unless you have hands-free. And you can't pay attention to all those things. And you shouldn't be on your phone. You shouldn't have a cell phone anyway. But if you tried to drive with a stick shift, clutch, brake, accelerator, steering wheel, turn signals, watch where you're going, and shift all at the same time, you need to pay attention. And I guess Americans don't know how to do that, or only 2% of them do. So it's too bad. It's too bad because there's a lot of joy and pleasure with the American automobile with a standard transmission. There's nothing like it. Driving an automatic, anybody can do that. So, since Rich mentioned cars, what is the best spark plug for your car? Well, when I worked at the auto parts store back in the 70s, behind the counter, there was a great mechanic. His name was Bert. And Bert was an older guy. And he knew a lot about a lot because he was an old guy back then. And he would share his information with me. And he said, hey, Vin, the best spark plug for a General Motors vehicle is a General Motors spark plug. And back then they were AC. That's what they were called. Then AC Delco. And now they are Delcos. And the best for a Ford would be an Autolite. And the best for a Chrysler product would be a Mopar. And I still believe that's true. And the best for a German car would be Bosch. So, for the most part, and I've experimented, I put in some Denso, which would be an Asian spark plug. I put them in my Chevy. Now, the Chevy has a high energy ignition system. And they say, whatever you do, whatever it comes with, do not downgrade your spark plug. Well, Vinny wanted to see. I had to test it. So I put in, now these came with iridium spark plugs. And that's just about the top of the heap in terms of expense and quality and durability. Iridium. IRIDIUM. And the recommended spark plug for my Chevy is a Delco Iridium spark plug. Let's say $6 a piece, maybe $5 a piece on sale. Well, I got some for about $1 a piece, and they were Denso, and they're just pure, plain old spark plugs. The mileage went down probably 20%. I took them out right away. And I have them as a memento of a learning experience. So number one, I don't buy Denso spark plugs. We don't have any Asian cars here. My dad was in World War II and he fought the Japanese. So we didn't have any Japanese cars in our family because they wanted to kill my dad. And he remembered that. He remembered being shot at. And he remembered his buddies being executed by the Japanese. So we didn't have any Japanese cars in my family. Okay, so what do we do? Well, we try to adhere to Delco for General Motors cars. And we try to adhere to Autolite for Ford products. And we try to adhere to Bosch for the Mercedes that we work on. We work on a lot of Mercedes here. But Autolite is a darn good spark plug in my book. Some people say it's not very good. Well, I think they're confused. And I'm looking at their website, and valid from January 1 through December 31 of 2020, that's all year, they have a mail-in rebate. You can just look it up, Autolite rebate. Now, the rebate is fantastic. If you get a plain old platinum spark plug, that means 1/2 of the spark is going to be platinum. That'd be the center electrode. They'll give you $1 back, up to $16. If you have a double platinum spark plug by Autolite, they'll give you $2 back each for a maximum of $32. If you have an Iridium XP, they'll give you $3 back, or an Iridium ultra fine wire, $3 back per plug for a maximum of $48. You got to be crazy not to do that. So we will put Autolite spark plugs in that General Motors car because we'll buy the very best Autolite Iridium spark plugs. We'll pay about $4.50 on sale at Rock Auto for those spark plugs, and we'll get $3 back on each one, and they'll cost us $1.50 each. So 6 spark plugs will be $9. It's crazy not to do that. So I wanted to share with you my thoughts on spark plugs. I like Bosch, no question about it. I really like the Bosch spark plug for a Mercedes. And that's what we try to put in whenever it is to our financial advantage to do that. And whenever we change spark plugs, we always do two things. Number one, we check the gap of the spark plug that came out. We look at the spark, well, we do many things. We look at the spark plugs to read them. And there's a way you can read the spark plugs. And what that means is the color of the center insulator. If it's a light tan, that's great. If it's black, you've got a problem. That means either you've got too much fuel, or you have leaking rings, or you have leaking valve seals. Something is wrong where oil's getting into the combustion chamber in a quantity that's too much. And it is showing up as black soot on the spark plugs. So for those who are mechanics of any amount of time, you've learned how to read the spark plugs. And you can look that up on the internet. You can look up reading spark plugs, and that tells you the cylinder condition by the color of the insulator on the spark plug on the inside. You have to take them out and look at it. And when you change your spark plugs, you'll know whether your engine's, in good health or not. Now, you can get a book. I just bought one, Chevrolet Silverado, GMC Sierra, 1999 through 2006. It's by Haynes, Haynes. It's the Haynes repair manual. And they say it's based on a complete tear down and rebuild of the vehicle. Engine, transmission, specifications, capacities, how to do it. It's all there. And this particular book is, let me go, looks like about 300 pages. Okay, about 300 pages. And it was about $20. And it's okay. I think the Chilton one is better. Chilton and Haynes are competitors in the repair manuals for vehicles. And if you're going to keep your vehicle, I suggest you buy one of those books. The problem is if you go to eBay, I think darn books are $40. It's crazy. So you can go to AutoZone and you can see if how much it is at AutoZone. But what we do, we negotiate with AutoZone. We ask them how much it is. They tell us, and we go, well, we can get it for less. And we tell them how much less, and they go, okay, we'll do that. I'm serious. We don't pay the asking price. Why should we? Why should we pay the asking price if we don't have to? Now, we don't beat them up. We just say, if you'd like our business, we'll be glad to give it to you. We'll give you all of it. And we spend a lot of money there. We buy a lot of parts. And because we buy a lot of parts and because we're loyal to them whenever they are loyal to us, they think it's good to give us a better price, and they do. So they have three kinds of prices. They have the retail price. Guy walks in, gal walks in, says, I need some spark plugs, and they say, okay, we got them, here's the price. Then there's the guy who walks in or the gal who walks in from the automotive shop, and that's a lower price. And then there's the match it price, which is lower than both of those. So yeah, I got you, but I can get it for less. I appreciate it. I think I'll do that. Well, no. They'll give you 20% off. That'll take a little bit of work, but 10% is real easy. They'll give you 10% almost all the time if you ask for it. So why not ask for it? Okay? That'll help offset the government's taxing, the sales tax on those parts. So consider getting the Chilton #1 or the Haynes Repair Manual #2 if you're going to keep your vehicle. So what do I keep in the car or the truck? Well, I'll tell you. I keep some spare parts in each vehicle. And these are the things that could go bad or that I might need. So in the trunk of the car or in the toolbox, that aluminum toolbox that's behind the rear window of the pickup truck cab, that bolts to the bed, that pickup truck toolbox. I'll keep a fan belt, sometimes called a serpentine belt. Now, it doesn't have to be new, but it has to be one that fits that vehicle. And, there's some really silly concepts, like you can get a universal one and you can keep it in your trunk. Why would you get a universal one? Get the one that fits. It'll cost more for a universal, make it fit on the side of the road, which is a really hard thing to do, as compared to get the one that really fits right the first time. And how much do they cost? Like $20 to $30 if you have to buy a new one. And you don't have to buy the best one. You can buy, the bottom of the barrel if your plan is just to get you home. So, we determine whether we're going to have that one for a long time or whether we just want us to get home with it. So we have an extra fan belt or serpentine belt and pulleys. There are these idler kind of pulleys on Mercedes. They wear out and those darn things just quit. The grease seems to evaporate and they stop working. They break the belt. And now you're in a lot of trouble. So we keep one of those in the trunk too. We'll be right back. So there are a lot of vehicles that have these idler pulleys that are part of the belt drive system. Chevys, Fords, Mercedes. And if you buy the parts, you can get them at AutoZone for, let's say, $10, $11, $15 a piece. You can go to, if you know what you're doing and you're confident in your ability to determine which part you want, you go to rockauto.com, ROCKAUTO.com. And they have it for the lowest price almost all the time. So we sometimes buy from Rock Auto. So let me give you an example. I just went to eBay and you can buy this particular pulley for the Mercedes for $11, $12, or you can buy it at Rock Auto for $3.95. And there's some people on eBay selling the same pulley used for almost $200. They're out of their minds. So if you go to Rock Auto, you can click on the year, make, and model and engine of your choice, and you can find all the parts, or almost all the parts that you would be interested in buying, including a bumper if you want to get one from there. So we carry the drive belt or the fan belt or the serpentine belt, whatever you want to call it. We carry a spare idler pulley. We carry water, distilled water, new in a sealed container, out of the sun. Okay? And why? Because we may get thirsty, or the radiator may get thirsty, or the battery may get thirsty. And distilled water is suitable for all those purposes: people, batteries, and cooling systems. We also keep engine oil in each vehicle. 2 quarts. 2 sealed quarts. Engine oil. The kind that goes in the engine. Not just oil we've got lying around, but exactly the right oil for that engine. Should we have some kind of failure and we need to top off and we're not, near home, we can get home without destroying the engine. We also keep transmission fluid with us, the right kind for that vehicle. Now, if it's a General Motors, we keep Dexron. Okay. If it's Ford, it's Mercon. Okay. And we keep 2 quarts of that. And we also have a tow strap. Now, you can get these at the Chinese factory tool outlet, Harbor Freight. And you get them 16 or 20 feet long, and they're like $10 with these hooks, these steel hooks. And the idea is sometimes you might need to be pulled off the road. Whether it's legal or not, to me, that's irrelevant. If I've got a situation I need to pull that vehicle out of the way of getting killed by being in it or having it destroyed by some jerk running into it, I'm going to move it out of the way. And if I need a tow strap, I have one with me. And the investment's $10 or $12. Okay, I keep maps in the vehicle. Paper maps. Jumper cables. Yeah. Now, jumper cables, the Chi-Coms are lying to us. They say, well, it's, heavy duty. Nonsense. A heavy duty set of jumper cables is going to cost between $150 and $200. That'd be copper cable. Well, now what they're doing is they're using aluminum wire and they're plating it with a really thin layer of copper. Let's say copper plated. Yeah. So if you have aluminum wire, it needs to be way thicker than the wire would be if you use a copper cable, jumper cable set. Okay. So for example, the absolute thinnest gauge that I would want to use would be 4 gauge. And the reason is if you don't have enough current going from the car jumping to the car being jumped with these jumper cables, if you don't have a good connection, and you don't have a thick enough cable that can carry the current, you'll burn out the starter of the vehicle that you're trying to start. So a good set of jumper cables is important. And look at how the cable is attached to the cable clamps. Is it just folded in there? Is it crimped in there? So is it crimped with the insulation? Just strip the wire, fold it back, crimp the insulation and the wire under the same copper-plated piece of steel. That is the jaw of the jumper cable. If that's the case, it's always going to be weak. You want just metal-to-metal contact and crimped. Power steering fluid. Sometimes things go wrong and you need to top off your power steering fluid. Well, if you're driving along and you hear this hum or whine of the power steering system, the pump, and you run out of fluid, you're going to destroy that pump. And it's going to cost hundreds of dollars, maybe $1,000 even, to fix that. So a little bit of power steering fluid would be nice. Make sure you get the right kind. So we keep wrenches and screwdrivers and sockets and a pry bar and a hammer in a tool bag. Now, we did buy these cloth tool bags. Rather than a toolbox, it will slide around the trunk. And, in a hard turn or an emergency turn, a steel one could go through this, ding up the side of the car. Hit the inside wall of the trunk and poke through a dent on the skin of the car. Spare tire. And make sure it's inflated. And tire plug kit. You ought to have that. And a blanket in case you get cold or have to get under the car. Long-term storage food, a breaker bar, lug nut, socket to change your tires. And in case you have to tune somebody up, you ought to keep that breaker bar inside the car. AC inverter, a jack, a pistol, charges, ratchet straps, and a first aid kit. Thanks so much, class. We'll see you next week.